I'm Pamela Smith, a mother of 5 and grandmother of 7.5. I've lived my whole life in northern Utah, and besides spending time with my amazing husband and family, I love piano, essential oils, and networking with people everywhere. One day, I was surfing YouTube and came across a video from the U.S. Secretary of Education.
I think our schools should be open 12, 13, 14 hours a day. So it's not just lengthening.
So 8 to 8 or something like that?
Yes, and let me tell you what, not just lengthening obviously the school day, but a wide variety of after-school activities. At home we attached healthcare clinics to about 24 of our schools. Where schools truly become the centers of the community, great things happen. So I think we need the schools open much longer hours.
Keep them open 12 hours a day, 12 months a year?
Yes.
12 hours a day, 12 months a year.
And I would go to 6 or 7 days a week, not just Monday through Friday.
7 days a week.
Schools
so the school becomes a center of community life.
Where the school becomes a center of community life, great things are going to happen for those families and great things are going to happen for those children.
Nothing I say will have as much impact on your life and your children's lives as what we just heard Arne Duncan say. Now, as shocking as Secretary Duncan's statements are, he is not the only one with these goals. In fact, there are many other powerful leaders who feel the same way and have spoken openly about it. This next clip is Melissa Harris Perry, a well-known political commentator and TV host on MSNBC. She is well respected in the education community.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
So she believes children are commodities, and she is one of the foremost experts and influencers in the media today. Over the past few years, I have become aware of and concerned about some hidden but radical changes occurring in local education. I don't know if you knew this, but America has been implementing unprecedented national education reform. I was horrified when I discovered that these ideas were not only affecting big cities in other states, but were right here in my own hometown in Utah. The driving force of this movement is data collection. At the state level, both legislators and school board members have expressed concerns over data collection. Perhaps you are wondering how and why, and what does this have to do with education? Before we get too deep into the discussion, I want to share another clip of what our kids see through the Internet Safety Program at school. It's shown every year to help youth understand the importance of protecting their personal information, even a picture.
Oh, man. I feel like a compound B, 46.7% by weight, compound B.
Once you post your image online, you can't take it back. Anyone can see it. Family, friends, anyone. Remember, think before you post.
Schools, both public and charter, collect lots of information on students when they enroll and throughout their years in school. Many private and homeschool students share personal information if they are enrolled in online classes or are required to take year-end assessments. Where does that information go? Is it protected? A new law passed in 2013 called the Student Achievement Backpack. Information is gathered through many different portals, such as forms, tests or assessments, PowerSchool, Utah Futures, UTREX, the Student Success Inventory, medical records, behavioral reports, and disciplinary reports. Basically, anytime you or your child signs on to one of these sites, fills out a form, or take computer adaptive tests or assessments, schools must provide that information to the local school district, who gives it to the state, the federal government, and other public and private organizations. This bill mandates data collection for teachers and staff as well. Let me be perfectly clear. Data has been collected for many years in Utah. However, in 2009, Utah built a state longitudinal database system with $9.6 million in federal funds that came from the stimulus package. That money built it, but state taxes are required to maintain it. This takes needed money out of the classroom and redirects it to control the classroom. With this new data system in place, Utah literally unplugged from the old system, which required schools to gather and share general data on students and staff, but protected that data from being personally identifiable. Utah then plugged into a completely different system, one that is interoperable or shared. On the Student Interoperability Framework website, where student data is provided to all 50 states, federal agencies, and third parties, it states they are one wire with one plug, with an open global standard for seamless, real-time data transfer. Here, student and staff information is being stored in separate and individual backpacks or disaggregate information and kept indefinitely for research and analysis. The national data collection model was designed by the federal government to provide an ideal model for states to follow. All states are working towards compliance to this model. What are they requesting? Hundreds of data points, including voting status, nickname, bus stop arrival time, health information, behavioral assessments, ability grouping, and biometrics. Let's look at behavioral assessments and biometrics. Do schools really gather and share behaviors of your child from preschool and beyond? Yes. House Bill 15 mandates it. Some teachers are using class dojos to let parents know how their child is behaving in class. But this information isn't just between parents and teachers. These records will go into your child's backpack and follow them indefinitely. What does your school use to gather behavioral information for your child's backpack? And what are biometrics? Well, biometrics are fingerprints, facial characteristics, retina patterns, voice prints, DNA, and handwriting samples. Even law enforcement can't gather most of this information except on suspected criminals. You may be asking yourself, how can all this information be safely stored to protect privacy? I believe the more critical and correct question should be, what kind of government inventories its people? And should the government be allowed to collect this kind of information at all? Remember the student's picture posted at school. Once it's out there, you can't control where it goes or who will ultimately have access to this information. State superintendents across the nation belong to an organization called the CCSSO. They are joint owners of the new reform standards called Common Core. For decades, they have been committed to individualizing or disaggregating data and making it more accessible. As you can see on their current website, it is their continued goal. This goal was accomplished when the state longitudinal data system was built in every state. So let me reiterate these important facts once more. Through the state longitudinal database system, your child's school records became personally identifiable or disaggregated, and accessible to the state, federal government, and third parties. How could this happen without parents knowing? Aren't there laws to protect privacy? Yes, there are. The National Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, and the Utah FERPA laws had strict rules designed to protect an individual's information. But over the past few years, the federal government has drastically altered FERPA. What used to require parental consent for personal student information has been reduced to a best practice. That means it's just a good idea with no consequences if parents aren't contacted. And personally identifiable information that used to be protected under this law can now be disclosed to third parties without prior written consent. These law changes open a whole new realm of accessibility to your child's personal information to both private and government entities. Think this isn't happening where you live? Well, in 2012, Park City High School allowed DNA nose swabs to be taken on all students to study the H1N1 virus. Many parents were upset after learning that if they didn't get the memo and didn't contact the school in one of the ways listed, they were giving consent for their child to provide DNA to various public and private entities. Do you know what the privacy policies are in your school district? This kind of data collection will now take place without parental consent. The most disturbing part of this is that most parents have no idea this kind of personal information is required to be gathered on their child. Plus, now with the FERPA law changes, they may not even know when this information will be taken. In 2009, Arnie Duncan said, "Hopefully someday we can track children from preschool to high school and from high school to college and college to career." The multi-billion-dollar question is, why? Well, so kids can be placed in a job. You know, promises? Schools are promising literacy and numeracy, being college and career ready, being globally competitive, and making community investments. On the Prosperity 2020 website, your child is referred to as the human capital needed to build well-trained, educated workers. The only problem is, this workforce model is controlled. There is great value and human liberty in not removing all risk from decision-making. The power of individual self-discovery can never be undervalued or replaced. Did you know what you would become in 3rd or 8th grade? Are children being forced into a career because of a track they were put on at age 8 or 13? These are the ages that high-stakes testing will be given to children, which will decide their abilities for life. Where's the freedom, the choice? Education reform, or the Get a Job model, seeks to put children on a career path which controls what type of education they get. Is training for a job really education? Currently, Utah is rewriting their graduation degree requirements, dividing them into several levels of achievement with clear distinction of academic abilities. Will youth be able to switch tracks later in life, or will the new degrees limit access to future possibilities, especially when children will be judged on what was put in their backpack at preschool and beyond? The correlation between data collection and workforce management are harder to connect at the local level because school boards, administrators, and teachers are focused on complying with state and federal mandates for funding and grading. Administrators and teachers trust the system that has taken care of them in the past. But those in Washington who are interpreting the data schools are providing are changing everything. Because funding hinges on data, and data collection drives your child's education and career options, schools are forced into complying with flawed state and federal grading systems. Let me show you how these grading systems are flawed. Viewmont High School has a reputation of being an excellent school. People from all around the country have come to observe and learn from their high scholastic standard. However, this year, they received an F grade based on the new grading system. The principal stated, "If anyone in my community sees the F, they know it is a flawed grading system, and it speaks more to the system than it does to Viewmont High." Another example is Mountain Green Elementary, who has always been a top-ranked school, but because students couldn't get higher than the A they already had, showing a lack of growth, they received a C grade. Should this flawed grading system be allowed to control what schools do and affect the funding they receive? What will they have to comply with to achieve an A grade in the future? One mandate this year was to get the backpack system up and running in every school. Most schools have complied. They need the money. Data is only one pillar of the 4 pillars outlined in the National Education Reform Model. However, it is the key component that drives the rest of this reform. To put it simply, data collection is the huge beast that is driving national education reform. It is driving funding and policy. Children are not only losing their privacy, they are being taken out of the reach of their parents and put into a one-size-fits-all national school model, whose stated goal is to put them into the workforce and manage them. So what can you do? If you don't want your child to be the product of this reform, you need to stop feeding the data beast. By starving this system, parents will start protecting their privacy and also help return education decisions to the local level where they belong. First, please verify. Check out everything that I've shared. Check out the State Longitudinal Database System, the Student Achievement Backpack Bill, the Behavioral Assessment Bill, and other binding contracts. Base your decisions on facts and not claims or assumptions or trust. Second, opt out of all computer adaptive testing and assessments. Third, contact your local school board members, your legislators, the governor, and friends to voice your concerns and desire to keep education local and private. And last, empower yourself with the knowledge you need to have the courage to reclaim your own family's privacy.